when I was building this work anniversary program, one of the big components is that our employees receive a gift when they hit a certain milestone. And I thought, like, oh, this is going to be a piece of cake. I'll send out a survey, find out what people want to receive. We're good. And then everybody at all locations will receive the same item. So Seattle, gloomy, colder weather. I was like, great. So I included a sweatshirt, and I had not been to Bangkok yet. And I have since visited, and I went, and it was so hot. So I really quickly learned there is no one size fits all to the programs that we're building. So I received feedback, that this may not work, but the office in Bangkok is very cold. They keep it very, very cold for that reason. So people do wear sweatshirts inside the office, but it was definitely a moment of like, oh, okay, what I think would work for everyone is not going to work for everyone. And it's just a matter of asking and receiving that feedback and then going from there and then determining what makes sense for everyone, like honoring the different locations that we have while still maintaining the one culture that we're building.
Hi everyone, and welcome to this next episode of the Freedom of Work podcast. So we're going to be delving into a few different topics, people experience, culture, and also like employer branding at scale. So we are joined today by Tannum. I'm really excited for this conversation. So yeah, Tannum, do you want to maybe introduce yourself, tell the listeners and viewers a little bit about yourself and why you're joining here today?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, Leah. I'm so excited to be here. So my name is Tannum. I am RentSpree's People Experience and Culture Senior Manager. And I have around 10 years of experience now in the people experience, employer brand, internal communication space. But prior to that, I was actually in the radio industry. So kind of a big departure. But I can confidently say I absolutely love what I do, and very, very quickly realized that my passion is in giving people the greatest experience they could have while they're working and building amazing products. So that's a little bit about me.
Yeah, at least you've got your radio voice for the podcast as well. So absolutely.
I should mention I was more behind the scenes,
Okay.
not actually on the radio, but it was a really, really great experience, and taught me a lot about myself and also just how to interact with people. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's go into it then. Maybe share a little bit about your journey. So how have you maybe moved from shaping culture in retail and consumer brands to lead in employer brands and people experiences across multiple brands? What did that kind of look like for you?
Yeah. So when I first started in the employer brand space, to be honest, I didn't even know employer brand was an industry. And when I started, I actually worked at a company called Golden Hippo, and they have over 20, probably more at this point, over 20 health and wellness brands underneath their umbrella. And when I started there, it was very, very much a startup, probably around 100-ish people at that point. And they didn't have anybody owning the actual employer brand of Golden Hippo, like the hiring function of the company. And all of our resources, understandably so, were going towards the actual retail consumer brands. And it got to a point where we were a huge hiring volume, and people were so confused as to what the actual brand was, what the actual company did. So that there was such a huge disconnect in what we were doing inside at Golden Hippo, but then what we were sharing with others externally. So I just took it upon myself to start building out the employer brand of Golden Hippo, really, really building the employee value proposition of what we're promising our candidates and our employees once they join us at the company. And it really started to bridge the gap between all of our amazing consumer brands and retail brands with the employer brand itself. And so fast forward quite a few years at this point. I also took on the corporate entity of Golden Hippo's employer brand, but also the other sub companies underneath that umbrella. So the manufacturing facility and the customer service facility, and the fulfillment facility as well. So at that point, I was managing over 4 employer brands, and people experience functions, all all of which came with their own unique sets of cultures and candidates, vastly different industries. So I really learned so much about what different types of people want in an employer, and what they want to the type of culture they want to be a part of, because were not the same at all. They were all very different. So yeah, so I learned a lot, and it was a lot of trial and error and a lot of failing and learning from the failure as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like this experimental part of the people experience and making sure that you're not just kind of doing one thing and then just sticking with it, even though it's not working. Because I think the whole point of employer branding is it's kind of constantly evolving, it's constantly changing, especially with oncoming tools, AI, etc., etc. It's only going to change faster than maybe it ever has done before. So I think, especially that you can kind of incorporate yourself into all of these different teams and see how they work. I think that's a really special way to be able to see what's working and what isn't. And yeah, absolutely. Like being like so experimental with it and maybe even getting like a few people and trialing it with them and seeing if it works or not and kind of test groups because it doesn't need to be rolled out straight away. It doesn't have to be perfect straight away. And I think that's what everyone needs to realize, especially the HR teams. The pressure shouldn't be 100%. This new employer brand of EVP needs to be set in stone, this, and this. And this is now when you do the full rebrand and that's what it is. It's like, no, because we may actually do this and then a whole new product team may be created and that doesn't align with anything that we have all just said. So yeah, I think this constant kind of experimentation and failure, I think is really welcomed in this kind of shaping a culture and seeing what employer branding works for each brand, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. And you just reminded me of something our CEO says often at RentSpree, Mike Lucarelli. He says, strive for progress, not for perfection. And when, especially in a startup environment, it's just go. So it truly is just a matter of like, oh, this is not perfect yet, but I'm going to run with it and see what happens. And
Yeah,
sometimes it works, and sometimes it
yeah,
doesn't, and then you go from there.
exactly. It's kind of like just trialing it out and seeing what works. Because what could be worse is not trying it at all, and it actually could have worked in the first place. So,
Exactly.
like, yeah, I really like that. I think it kind of gives like a really good vision about like your journey and where you've come from and why you kind of really like that. So was this kind of what then created your and like inspired you to create like this dedicated employer brand and people experience department at Golden Hippo and then now at RentSpree? Is that kind of where it came from and now has gone to?
Yeah. I speaking of just trying and just seeing what happens. I was I was doing the employer brand function at Golden Hippo, but that was not in my job title. That was not in my job description. It technically did not exist. And I was on the reputation management team at Golden Hippo. I like to say it's just a fancy way of saying I responded to all of our product reviews. So that essentially was my job, just managing reputation of our retail brands. So, but I was also creating employer brand content for our LinkedIn pages, starting to dabble in our career site, updating that as well, testing to see what candidates want. And I'm very grateful that I had a manager, Kat Kugel, who was so supportive of me just trying. Hey, if this is what you like to do, go for it. And I'm also very grateful. Kevin Frank was our chief people officer, and he had just joined the company. And I think within 2 weeks of him joining, I built out a job description of what I thought the company needed at the time. It was an employer brand specialist. And truly, like his second week, I was like, Kevin, hi, my name is Tannum, and I want to do this full time. Here's why. And I shared the job description with him. And to this day, so grateful for his support because he said yes. And from there, I managed the employer brand full time. And that completely snowballed into internal communications and employee engagement and at one point onboarding and the new hire experience.
Yeah.
So that I was very, very grateful that it turned into this entire function within itself. And then I truly so grateful. It's helpful to have these conversations because it reminds you of
Yes,
the people who supported you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So fast forward to today at RentSpree, Kevin Frank, our chief people officer, is my boss again. And he saw the need for a tandem at RentSpree and to have someone owning the employer brand and people experience. So I'm doing it. I'm doing it all over again at RentSpree. And it's been such a joy and journey and truly an eye-opening experience because it was like a bit of like a reality check. It's like, oh, hey, you're still learning. You still have a lot to learn, Tannum. So it's been really, really great that I'm still able to continue doing this.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I truly see your passion in employer brands. And it's something that I used to do like a few years back at like a previous company. And it's employer branding sits in that weird section, doesn't it? Of is it marketing? Is it HR?
Oh,
it's both, but also not. So
yeah.
it's exactly why having like an employer brand specialist, it just makes the most sense. You sit in between both. I assume if that's what you'd say as well. But yeah, I think it's kind of a really special role, and I can see it really appearing a lot more and really getting into that architecture. And you want to be the person that makes people want to be employee advocates of the business, and you want to not be forcing people. You want people just to be able to post it and just speak the truth and really like be like the energy of what you are as a company. So yeah, I think it's a really kind of nice, rewarding job as well when you see it all coming to fruition and seeing what you've done and the programs you've put in place and the initiatives have really created like a good space, and people aren't maybe leaving the roles as faster as people think because it's not kind of aligned to what they originally thought the job was, for example. I'm not saying that this has happened, but it happens, doesn't it? If the employer branding is not aligned to what was kind of projected in the first place.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, and that can become like detrimental to success of companies because the hiring process it can take however long it is. For example, let's say it takes 4 weeks, but those 4 weeks are a lot of time out of the person being hired and the hiring manager, the people that are all part of it along the way. And if by the time they start and they realize this wasn't really what was projected on your careers site, your LinkedIn, the job description, I haven't got the right setup I needed, and things, the projects I'm working on are maybe not now, they're next year's project. And there can be a lot of things that take place. And if the employer branding's not projected in that first instance and matches what was kind of on the outset, then it's going to be detrimental and people are going to drop out, especially in these early stages of hiring. I think it's in like the first 3 months, people are most likely to quit because they don't really have any connection to the company. They don't really owe them much at that point. And you've then just wasted your time and their time. 3 months of everybody's time is just wasted. So I really do think that, yeah, the employer branding is a really great way to make sure that people are truly aligned and matched with what they think is the right job for them, really, and the right person for the role as well. I think it kind of swings in both ways.
Yeah, absolutely. I always say it exactly what you just said, but it's the employer brand is a commitment, like a commitment that you're making to candidates and to new hires. And if And that's why when I started an employer brand, I was surprised that my role evolved so much to encompass beyond just the recruiting experience, but far into the actual employee experience, far beyond, after they were hired. And at first I'm like, well, there's so many different functions. Like that sounds like a different job. But really it's all connected. Like the commitment that you make to the candidates before they even get interviewed, all the way through once they're hired at 7 years and 10 years, like that it's a full employee life cycle that is all interwoven with one another. So yeah, it's one big promise that you're making to your people.
Yeah, that's it, isn't it? And by you promising them, it's almost like they're promising you to perform well in the job and be successful and make the company succeed and believe in the missions and values. So it's kind of, yeah, as you say, it's like a two-way promise to both of them. So yeah, I really like that. And then as we are sort of talking about these programs and different initiatives, is there anything that you've really found that worked really well, or maybe one program that's really had like a great impact on employee engagement and or retention, and why?
Yes. So that question really got me thinking. There are quite a few programs and initiatives I can think of, but one that really stood out to me in my experience was actually an employee podcast. And we are on a podcast as well.
Yeah.
But I think it at first I was incredibly skeptical. I was very, very skeptical because I was like, are candidates going to take the time to listen to a podcast with employees talking about their experience at the company? And as we were talking earlier, okay, I just decided I will just test it. I'll test it. I can do one episode and see what happens.
Yeah.
It's a low commitment. There really isn't a ton, if any, cost associated to creating a podcast. As I mentioned, I have a lot of startup experience where budget typically isn't a luxury to have. So it was me, it was a Google meeting and pressing record and then editing on iMovie, which comes with every Mac laptop. You don't have to pay for iMovie. And it was such a huge learning opportunity, and one that I was proven wrong. I saw it pay off. And it's thinking of like how this is all connected. It really was a multi-purpose tool for building not only employer brand, but building employee engagement, building connection and community within a team, and and building pride in yourself when you're a guest on a podcast. It feels great. Like it feels like I was so honored when you reached out. It's such a great experience to have someone recognize you and want you to share your story.
Yeah.
So that was honestly a tool that really was so profound in building employee engagement and employer brand and retention, because our employees got to share their story. It really built so much pride and morale within them because they got to share their story on a bigger platform than, one would normally have. And it created so much content, like a 45-minute episode. There's 10, like over 10 juicy nuggets of quotes that you could pull from a candidate or from an employee about sharing their experience at that company. And then you can repurpose those shorter clips. You can turn it into a blog. You could turn it into a career site, section. It really turned into such a profound way of sharing employee experience and building engagement in that way.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I absolutely love this. And weirdly enough, someone who I'm recording a podcast with in a couple of weeks also shared that this is something that she
Oh,
started as well, an employee podcast. And that's so weird for me to speak to two people in the same month about something like so similar. And I really love it. I think it's such an amazing idea to, and as you said, like being able to speak and being able to ask to be spoken on a podcast is you do feel a big sense of pride, don't you? Because you know that like actually when you do reflect and look back and like as you said, these amazing initiatives and programs that really have created this like core employee engagement and you can see, oh, this really worked well. You feel like really proud of yourself for taking that leap and getting into it. I think, yeah, that's a really good idea. And I love this, like the clip thing. It's like having it on your careers page, almost like Harry Potter with like the walking the walls that like
Oh, I
kind of
love that.
you can move as you kind of hover across them and they speak. I think that's quite cool, like the wall of fame, but
Yeah.
it's RentSpree. So yeah, I really like that. It's a great initiative, and if you kind of even just did one of those every month, it's a great thing to do. I know on at Remote First, we sometimes highlight people across the world and give like a little fact about themselves on LinkedIn. But yeah, I really like this. It gives like a little bit of a twist and doesn't have to be anything too long. It can be
No.
20 minutes, but it can be an hour if they want it to be. So that's
Yeah.
the unique thing about that. I love that.
Yeah, exactly. And I should also mention it really helped with more introverted employees
Yeah.
because I think like a video, of course, video works phenomenally for employer brand. I'm not saying that. But for an employee who might be a little bit more shy and a little bit more introverted, audio only was a great way for them to warm up and feel comfortable with the platform and to share their story. But if they were comfortable with video, that's also great. So it really it's a very powerful tool.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I really like that. So shout out to podcasts.
Yes, yes.
So then, yeah, when you kind of are delving into these podcasts, and I know you're kind of wanting to be hands on, but also kind of be strategic, how do you balance that? By yeah, making sure you are kind of being hands on, but maintaining that strategic vision for these different kind of people programs you are putting in place.
Yeah, so that's a very interesting question because it's been very top of mind for me, and it's something I'm actively working on. So I can't say that I'm a professional and so great at being able to do both because it's really two very different muscles that you're building. To step back and look at it big picture and to see the overall purpose of the program or initiative while you're in the weeds editing audio and trying to get all the content posted. It's very like that's a very tactical side of it. So it's something I'm actively working on. But one thing I've seen work for me to be able to do both is to honestly step away from my laptop. I think when I'm sitting here at my desk editing the audio in Canva, creating the graphic to then highlight the podcast or to share the upcoming new policy. It's like it's so easy to get lost in the noise and the process and the steps because it takes a while. It takes a while to create these things, and especially when you're a team of one and you have to do both, and you have to wear all the different hats of thinking big picture and thinking strategically, but also doing the work. Um, Being able to step away to just to think, to limit the noise, to limit all the to-do lists and the project management of what you have to do. My best ideas have come from me on a walk, not looking at a screen.
Yeah.
And that's really when I'm able to pause and think, okay, why am I doing this? What is the goal of this? And if I've realized at that point, okay, maybe I'm straying from the goal or I've lost sight while I'm in the weeds doing all the work, it's
Mhm.
it's really powerful to just step away and pause and reflect. And to essentially recalibrate yourself and remind yourself of the overall strategy. The second thing I would say to that question is to um, I I like to insert myself into those big strategy meetings. Because I think when you're again in the weeds doing the work, it's easy to just get stuck there. But asking the right questions and asking the right people if you can be involved in the decision making conversations and to just essentially like insert yourself at the table. It's being around the strategic thinkers helps you build that muscle of building that strategy in your head, and really just again just I guess that's very aligned actually with the first part of my answer. It's like removing yourself from the actual to-do lists of what you have to do, and being around strategic thinkers and stepping away and reflecting on the higher purpose of all of this.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it is a tough question because I know everybody thinks they're probably doing both, whatever the situation is. It's me planning the podcast, but it's also looking at the strategy of the podcast. For example, everybody has that kind of two-way section for their role, I guess. And I think it does become difficult, doesn't it? And I think, yeah, I really like this like moment of pause to just kind of sit back a moment and think, okay, so if I'm on the receiving end of listening to these podcasts, what's that look like for me? And kind
Yeah.
of be the person in it rather than like being in it and not knowing what's actually happening type
Yeah.
thing. Yeah, I think that's really nice. And yeah, I also agree, like being strategic is actually kind of a lesson you have to learn. It's it doesn't just happen because you don't kind of know what the strategy is yet. And you have to maybe do a few things to realize what's working and what's not to create your strategy from that. So you can't just kind of have a strategy because you've got nothing that's tested it or nothing that's worked. So it kind of comes continuous. And then obviously once you've been in the role maybe for a little bit longer, it kind of think, okay, so that's really working for that group of people, but that's not working. And yeah, it's kind of that I think it's like continuous experimentation for the strategy. But yeah, I think it does help, as you said, to kind of be around those people that are strategically constantly thinking about that. What's the next steps for this? Kind of looking ahead at the next quarter, really kind of always seeing, okay, this is what we're doing now. What's the next thing? But I think, especially in like startup environments, this is like so fast paced, isn't it? What are we doing now? What's the next thing? Like constantly. So I can imagine this kind of splitting hands on with strategic work is so much more difficult in a startup because yeah, maybe you are kind of a team of one and it's a lot to deal with. But I know a lot of the bigger companies, they may have a team of 10 people in the employer branding team, and it's like really divided up nichely to dependent on what the program is, initiative, strategy. So yeah, I think it's fully dependent, is it, on you, the initiatives, what that looks like for the company, and just making sure, yeah, you are taking a moment to pause because it can be difficult if you kind of say, right, on a Tuesday I'm looking at strategy, but on a Wednesday I'm doing this. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
It's so
No.
because you'll have a message about something that needs to be more urgent than the thing that you had on the Wednesday, and it all kind of will go out of place. So yeah, I think just as you said, like taking these moments, step back and see if I was on the other side of this, receiving this, what would kind of my um result and expectation be of what was going to happen with that. So yeah.
Yeah, it's to your point, like the startup environment is at RentSpree also, especially. I have never seen such a fast-paced environment, and I consider myself a pretty quick person. So it's been such a great opportunity to see everybody is like literally we're just like rolling up our sleeves and just getting it done. And so I think when like I'm just trying to get through the day. Like I've got, and especially between all of the different functions. And to your point, larger companies have an entire internal communications team and an entire graphic design team and like an entire employer brand team. So when you're a team of one, it's like, okay, I have like right after this call, I need to make social media content for our employer brand. And then right after that, it's the all hands dry run. So I need to shift to internal comms for a bit. So when you're just trying to get through the day, it's like, what, there is no time to think strategically. So that time comes from being intentional. I'm like, okay, I'm going to walk away, take a breather, and I'll do some brainstorming then. Cause I
Yeah.
think that's when the juices really start to flow.
Yeah, I think that's a nice thing as well, especially for people that are working at home and just taking that moment to kind of walk away and, yeah, just have a little think, have a
Yeah.
little time apart from that. So yeah, as you are saying about this, the socials for social media, careers pages, LinkedIn, what does that kind of look like for you or RentSpree? So how do you leverage storytelling, transparency, and communication to create kind of the mission and value of your company, but also a sense of this like connection between distributed teams?
Yes. So when you first reached out about this podcast, I was so interested in being a part of it because of just how spread out RentSpree is. So RentSpree has a headquarters in Seattle, Washington, in the United States, and a headquarters in Bangkok, Thailand. So our two headquarters could not be further away from one another. And then there's folks like myself that are remote within the United States. So there's really such a vast, there's a lot of space in between all of our people.
Yeah.
But the beauty of storytelling is that it connects everyone together. And one of our big initiatives right now at RentSpree is really bridging any gaps between our folks,
Mhm.
because of just like physically we are just not all together, and that is just impossible. There's no way for us to do that. So being able to share stories from folks, and I'm thinking back to the podcast as I'm building out this podcast for RentSpree. It's a really powerful way of, again, not just building an employer brand, but building connection. Because between time zones, even like you and I were struggling to find a time to connect because of our time zone differences. So Bangkok's very early morning is the evening before in the United States. So it's very rare to have, we found a sweet spot. We call them spree hours, where we're able to connect with one another. Um, but those spree hours are really reserved for, business initiatives. So something asynchronous like a podcast is a really great way for folks to connect with one another asynchronously, because they're able to share, they're able to hear their stories, and it really gets rid of any barriers that one would have with a time zone difference or just being in a different country. So yeah, storytelling is, I mean, it is the oldest, it's the oldest form of communication and passing down beliefs and values to generations. I think that just proves how much storytelling works.
Yeah.
And it doesn't need to stop within a personal setting. It's a powerful tool for companies, to build values, to build connection, and to build community.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think if you've got storytelling right in a distributed team, it just completely shows as a business who you are and how strong you can be, even though you are spread across the world. And I think that's a really key thing to mention here. I think, yeah, I like this kind of spree hours as well. I think that's a nice little touch. But yeah, we can, I think this is the thing, isn't it, with documentation and communication and asynchronous work? It's kind of become this whole new way of working, isn't it? The tech's
Yeah.
there. That's why there is so many different project management tools, different softwares to be able to communicate and make sure that things are the best way possible. Open communication into different Slack channels, etc., and making sure you maybe not DMing someone, but putting it in a big channel so everyone can answer and be there
Mhm.
when they come online. And there's so many different. I think that could be probably a podcast in itself about
Yeah.
communicating in distributed teams, but Yeah, I think I really like this and what you said, leveraging storytelling. It was there from the age of time and the caves and stuff. So yeah, I think that's exactly what it is. It's showcasing what's truly happening, and for you to be able to be a part of that and just communicating that throughout. So yeah, I really like that, and it's just amazing to have you spread so far in your HQs. I think that's really nice and unique to have that kind of distance actually for both of your HQs. Yeah, it's really cool.
It's really, really cool. And you just get exposed to so many different types of people and cultures and holidays even that I like. This next week is actually Thailand's major New Year holiday called Songkran. And before working here, I couldn't tell you anything about Songkran. I would have no idea. So you're really just it's a really special environment to be a part of when you have such distributed teams.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think that's a really nice way to kind of finish off that question, just saying how special it is to be able to have the tools and the team to be able to work in such a amazing way, even across the world. So yeah, I really like that. So thanks for sharing that. And then yeah, so as we are talking about these different initiatives and programs, how do you, there might be a few different ways, but how do you measure the success of these people experiences, initiatives, and how does that data or like awards, etc., play into your strategy?
Yes. So that is an excellent question, and one that I've had to do a lot of trial and error with, because I think when, especially coming from the retail space, when you're able to put like a dollar sign on a product
Yeah.
and see the ROI immediately on
Yeah.
all of your initiatives, it's there's a luxury in that. So when I went into the people space, there there is no dollar sign at all, and it's you're really measuring feeling and sentiment. And
Mm.
of course, we could get into the nitty gritty of there are numbers that we can tie to these things, especially with employer brand initiatives where, click through rate and engagement rate. I do measure all of those things. So it when I started dabbling in the more people experience space, there is it's different. It's different metrics, period. So what we do at RentSpree specifically, but also a lot of companies have this as well, is pulse surveys and engagement surveys. And that's really an incredibly powerful tool for us and the people experience function to see what's working and what's not working. And there is an art to being able to share the purpose to our employees, because to them it might just it's another thing HR is asking them to fill out,
Yeah.
and it's time away from their to-do lists and their projects and initiatives. So when you really, again, like thinking strategically, when you share the purpose of it and you share why the HR team values this, their response and their feedback, it helps build that story, and the metrics there. So yeah, I mean, in addition to my monthly tracker, where I track everything from engagement rate on LinkedIn posts to um, emoji reactions to an internal communications Slack I sent that month. There are things you can measure, and also, like, again, going back to the top of our conversation, like seeing what works and what doesn't. Like, there was a time my Google sheet was so long. I was tracking too much at that point. So being able to step away and be like, okay, is that metric actually even important for me? Is that going to change how I'm making decisions? And if not, then I got rid of it. Um, but yeah, I started very big and just tracked everything and then really boiled it down to what actually matters. And that's for me, at least, it's like the high level. Is the employer brand content working? Yes or no? Is the experience of the employee once they get hired and go through our onboarding, is that aligned with what they had experienced prior? Yes or no? So yeah, so I tested a lot to see what works. But yeah, the metrics within the HR space are very, I think it's something that we all struggle with at some point and probably still do. But yeah, it's been interesting. But like you have to have numbers. You have to have numbers to tie to your initiatives. And more often than not, that's the language that your leadership team is speaking. They want to see the numbers. That's how they operate and how they think. So being able to pull those numbers to show that what you're doing is working is imperative. You have to have it.
Yeah, absolutely. So it seems like there is different ways of tracking it, but also the feelings and the way people are
Yeah.
actually experiencing it is also tracked as well. So yeah, I really like that. It puts it into a perspective of kind of what maybe is more important and what isn't, and making sure that you are aligned with what the candidates are thinking is going to be happening when they join the company. So yeah,
Yeah.
I really like that, definitely. Okay, so I'm kind of wanting to go into like scaling, but also authenticity. So I know we touched on you having two HQs and people kind of spread across the globe, but how do you kind of maintain this authenticity when scaling programs and processes across multiple teams and locations? I feel like it's a big question, but it's one I want to ask. So there you go.
And it's your podcast. You can ask whatever you want. So how I maintain authenticity when scaling programs and processes, I start with me. I start with maintaining that authenticity within myself. And I find that when I show people that I'm a human and I'm goofy and a little quirky and I make mistakes and I'm not perfect, I think that really, I like to think it really resonates with others to maintain that authenticity as well. We're a business, we're building a product, we have customers, we want to make money. That's like essentially every business ever created ever. But at the end of the day, we're people. Like we're people building these functions. And people want like empathy and kindness and authenticity. And I think when you remind people of that and you remind them that we are, again, just people at the end of the day, working towards shared goals, it really allows and invites others to bring their most authentic selves to work too. So yeah, I like always in my communications and in all hands, I'm me. I'm Tannum. I'm not going to put on this mask of this like corporate like robot and here to get the job done. I'm a human and you're a human and we're all humans navigating this world together and this business and this product. So I find that it really invites people to be themselves, but it also invites them to be real with one another and to be candid and respectful and to share feedback with one another and really support one another in being the best versions of ourselves we can be to create the best products that we can create.
Yeah.
So it's like, I guess that's a very, I don't like a nuanced way of answering it, but I maintain authenticity in these programs by maintaining authenticity within myself.
Yeah, no, I really enjoy that. I actually read something the other day and it was about like joining a company, you almost get, and it shouldn't be the case, like it's like a lottery ticket for what your manager's going to be or what your HR team's going to be. And you could join it thinking that it was amazing. Maybe you only have a few minutes with each person. And then by the time you start, you then have like this manager who doesn't really care, just wants facts and figures and numbers, and it's not human, and it's not empathetic, doesn't really ask you like how was your weekend, and these things are so important to be able to actually have like your best managers you think of are those that you like know about their weekend plans or what they have for dinner, or like these little bits and bobs that make them so human, I think is what people remember as a good manager. And I remember reading it and it said like it's tough because some people do get the bad lottery card and get
Hmm.
a bad manager, and then from there it's tough for them to be able to actually want to work for them if you don't like your own manager or you don't like the HR team. And I guess that's what you definitely don't want, because you want to be authentic, show you are a human too, show that you had a bit of fun on the weekend, what you got up to. It's just like kind of incorporating those little bits, and it doesn't have to be too much. It's just, as you said, just
Yeah.
really being authentic and showing up and showing that you are human too.
Yeah. Yeah.
So then, as we are speaking about this kind of being authentic and it's kind of across multiple teams, locations, is there any way that you ensure that engagement and recognition efforts are really feeling meaningful, and rather than like kind of this one size fits all approach? I know you mentioned already at Golden Hippo that you did have loads of initiatives depending on the team, but is there a way that you are ensuring that throughout?
Yes. And that's by asking. I have such amazing teammates in all locations. And if there's one thing I've learned in my, decade-ish of experience in this space, it's that what I think might be the best for others is not always what those others want.
Yeah.
And it's a great reality check of, because I consider myself to be like on the pulse of what people generally want. But going back to failing fast and learning fast, there have been
Yeah.
moments where I'm like, oh, okay, I was wrong. That's not what they want to receive. And so so I ask, and there's something a quote that I always go to. It's um, like if you don't know, ask. And I think like it's it's a powerful way to find out what people want to receive, whether that's through recognition or a gift or a program or a learning opportunity. Especially in distributed teams, well, there it is not a one size fits all at all. It physically it's not. And like I'm thinking of like a very specific example for this question, and it's actually our work anniversary program. So when I was building this work anniversary program, thinking of it's there's a few structures, a few tiers to it, but one of the big components is that our employees receive a gift, like a swag item when they hit a certain milestone. And I thought, I'm like, oh, this is gonna be a piece of cake. I'll send out a survey, find out what people want to receive. We're good. And then everybody at all locations will receive the same item.
Uh,
And this is like such a specific example, but it's a good
yeah.
one because it shows, so Seattle, gloomy, colder weather. I was like, great, I'll include a sweatshirt.
Yeah.
I'll include a sweatshirt and see. I'm assuming they want to receive that. But as we're building this one RentSpree, this one team, I didn't want it to be two different programs or, three different programs, even for all of our different employees. I want everyone to receive the same thing. So I included a sweatshirt. And this is this was early on when I joined RentSpree. I had not been to Bangkok yet, and I have since visited. Um,
Yes.
and I went, and it was so hot, so hot. The steam on my glasses, like truly a heat I've never experienced before.
Yeah.
I don't even think they own sweatshirts. Like it's just one of those things. Like anyway, but it ended up so I really quickly learned of what different cultures and different demographics and different locations would, there is no one size fits all to the programs that we're building. So I received feedback, that this may not work. But the office in Bangkok is very cold. They keep it very, very cold for that reason. So people do wear sweatshirts inside the office. Um, but it was definitely a moment of like, oh, okay, what I think would work for everyone is not going to work for everyone. And it's just a matter of asking and receiving that feedback, and then going from there, and then determining what would make sense, um, for everyone, like honoring the different locations that we have while still maintaining the one culture that we're building.
Yeah, that's such a nice like finishing sentence as well. I think that's really like people are going to appreciate that. And yeah, it's definitely cultures, locations. You don't know until you really kind of research and look into it and yeah,
Yeah.
visit there and see that. But at least they have the aircon cold, so it
Yes.
definitely didn't go amiss. Yeah, I really like that. And then looking ahead, so how do you see employer branding and people experience evolving as companies grow, especially in these kind of multi-brand, even like multi-location environments?
So I see this evolving, and it's not just me picturing this. I'm actually seeing this happen live time. When I first started in the employer brand function, it was very much just an employer brand function. And since being a part of this community, this growing community, I have seen it evolve into this is a term we use at RentSpree. We call it like a flywheel. And it just shows this never ending spin and connection of all of these different functions and how
Mhm.
they weave into one another. And I see this space evolving to encompass far more beyond, like I'm seeing it in my role right now. I don't just oversee the employer brand function. I oversee the employer brand function, the people experience function, the engagement function, the internal communications function, and the onboarding function. They are this completely connected group of programs and initiatives that all affect one another. So I see this evolving to encompass far more than what we started with just 5 or 6 years ago even. I see them evolving to grow and to really touch far more than what is within the job description. I see it really turning into this. I'm seeing it more and more now, and also within myself too. But just the people experience, like that umbrella can encompass so much more than just the employer brand or the content you see on LinkedIn or the orientation they get on day one. It's really
Mhm.
this interwoven connection of different functions that are working together to improve that employee and people experience.
Yeah, definitely. And I think if you aren't being woven together, then I think that's where you probably need to take a step back and be, why aren't we? I think it's
Yes.
really great to have like really clear, transparent communication and kind of even some companies have like kind of open roadmaps, what's going to be happening, and really have that as a clear vision and making sure that people are woven in when they need to be. And yeah, it kind of creates one big team rather than like segregated teams, which I think is a really nice and forward thinking way of working, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And I guess that was a little bit of kind of advice. But if you have anything specific, is there any advice that you would give someone looking to build scalable engagement and culture programs in their own organization?
Ooh. So, thinking back to our conversation, maintain that authenticity. Be yourself. People can tell when there's a facade or you're trying to put on this HR speak or corporate speak. It's very, very, very obvious. So just be yourself. But just be yourself, and that allows others and inspires others to be themselves too, and to bring
Yeah.
their best selves to work. So that's something I would want to leave with folks. And then another, um, to your point of, if you're not being connected into the other functions, ask yourself why you're not being connected to the other functions. And a quote I always go back to that a very good friend once told me is, closed mouths don't get fed. So thinking back on my career, like if I hadn't asked if I could do employer brand full time, or if I hadn't asked to take on the other parts of the people experience, I would not be sitting here in this conversation with you. And I think just advocating for yourself, advocating for this community and this people experience community that we're a part of, that often I think typically goes a little more, under recognized or underutilized, under resourced. Being able to advocate for yourself and for what you do is not only important for you, but it's important for the people that you support at your company. So just being an advocate, being authentic to yourself.
Yeah, I think that's a really nice two words beginning with A to finish, kind of being that really true advocate of yourself will only kind of push forward and helping people be authentic as well. And yeah, being authentic for yourself, I think draws really back well into that kind of whole HR persona and what that kind of looks like. So yes, thank you so much. I can't believe it's nearly been an hour.
I know.
It's gone so fast. But yeah, thank you so much. I was really just really engaging to find out about those kind of employee engagement programs and what that looks like for you whilst being hands-on and the strategy of that and kind of storytelling what that looks like in multiple locations. It's really kind of helped people hopefully to imagine what that looks like on a really big scale and that it can be doable. And I guess if they've got any further questions, they can reach out to yourself, reach out to me if you've got any further questions as well. But yeah, thank you so much for joining us, Tannum. It's honestly been amazing. And yeah, thank you for listening to us.
Thank you so much, Leah. I really appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.